How would you feel if your little brother had the exact same moral compass as your criminal slash alien slash literally the worst guy on planet Earth did? What if your boss planted a seismic paralyzing device in your neck because he was afraid of your 19-year-old crash outs? What if your mom told her to-date boyfriend all of your deepest and darkest and most important secrets? These are the major events of Invincible Season 3 so far, and in traditional Omni-Man fashion, they aren't pulling any punches with this season. 3 episodes in with over 2 hours of content, a lot has happened for Invincible, so let's go over the 5 best and 5 worst moments from Invincible Season 3's first 3 episodes. Spoiler warning for the show, of course, so strap in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new video, and let's talk about Invincible. Starting off with the 5th best moment, we've got Mark and Oliver getting their brand new suits. We see Mark sporting the legendary blue and black suit that we all know and love, and it looks as sharp as ever. It does lead to everyone calling him Invinciboy because they think he's an invincible knockoff, but it's okay. Since Oliver is a superhero now, he also gets his own suit, with a big old O on the front, which looks very similar to another Grayson superhero that we know and love to hate. Not only do these suits look great, and seeing Mark in this new attire is awesome, but this is also where the divide between the morality of someone who isn't human at all and someone who is only part human really starts to shine. Oliver doesn't exactly understand what his dad did wrong, and he also wants to be called Kid Omni-Man in order to restore the name of his father on Earth. Mark, of course, has to explain that their dad sucks, but Oliver just doesn't buy it. Legendary brother issues that might cause quite a bit of death and destruction down the line, but it is great, and this is easily one of the best moments from these first 3 episodes. Now moving into the 5th worst moment, we have Debbie telling Paul about her family of superheroes. For the typically amazing character of Debbie, this feels like an especially bad move, because doing this only causes negative side effects. Except for the fact that Debbie doesn't feel like she's lying to Paul. She's barely even started going out with Paul, and she just decides to tell this random dude her husband is public enemy number 1 and the secret identities of both of her sons. Not only does this endanger Paul, but it also endangers Debbie too. The more normal people that know about the secret identities, the worse off they are, because now there's just another person to keep track of and to try to protect from any villains that want to exploit this information. The only potential benefit Debbie is getting out of this is that she maybe feels more comfortable now with Paul, but then again, Paul is not like some guy she's super seriously dating. They've only been out twice. I understand she needs to confide in somebody, but this is a big deal. I mean, all she has in her life is her 2 sons, and she just gave away the most perilous aspect of their life to a random guy. If her whole thing is protecting her family, why did she just tell this guy all of her family secrets? Bad move, Debbie. Back onto the positive aspect of things, the 4th best moment from these 3 episodes is the fight scene slash conversation between Mark and Cecil that begins at the end of episode 1 and then carries over into episode 2. We're really starting to see the similarities between Mark and his dad and how right Cecil has been this whole time. No, it probably wasn't right for Cecil to put that device in Mark's head, but he was absolutely justified for it because he would have been strawberry jelly if he hadn't. This scene represents what I think will be the main major theme of this season, showing how Cecil's way of doing things ensure the greater good being accomplished just at the cost of engaging with certain evils. And how Mark isn't always right, despite literally bearing the entire weight of Earth's safety on his 2 shoulders. And then apart from how good this moment is story-wise, it's also just amazing action. Mark ripping through Reanimen, Cecil using all of his military tools to protect himself, and the Guardians of the Globe being torn apart due to all of this is just peak Invincible content that I am here for. Flipping back to the negative side, the moment I dislike the 4th most is Eve's conversation with Amber, because of course Amber was going to find her way onto the negative side of this list. This moment isn't exactly bad per se, but it doesn't do anything. Amber and Eve talk about pretty much nothing, and then we just move on and it's never really acknowledged again. The moment just feels particularly out of place, and I understand that it could become more important down the line, but right now the only thing it did was give us a minor update on the fact that Amber still exists and that she knows that Mark and Eve are dating. So overall, it just felt kind of pointless, I guess. There isn't a whole lot to say other than that, so the 3rd best moment of these 3 episodes are Cecil's flashbacks. And if that's too broad and I have to pick a very specific moment, I'm taking Cecil in prison, because that stuff was awesome. And then 2nd place would be him meeting Omni-Man for the first time. Just like with Mark and Cecil's fight, this moment has both major story development and is just incredible to watch. Cecil runs a prison full of murderous criminals and then immediately goes to confront the strongest creature the Earth had ever seen at that time. At least, I think he was the strongest. Correct me if I'm wrong. Also, the fact that Cecil knew that Omni-Man was lying straight from the jump is crazy to me. These flashbacks set up Cecil's current self so well and explain everything about him, and honestly, you gotta understand where this guy is coming from. When the first flashback scene started, I thought this was just going to be an explanation for why his face looks like that, but it ended up being much deeper than that. This flashback also helps us understand Mark's motivations better too, and shows us how the world of superheroes and villains is not as simple as it may seem. Cecil has risen a lot in my list of my favorite characters, and that just wouldn't have been the case if we didn't get these amazing origin story moments, so cheers to this. But as much as I enjoyed Cecil's backstory, something I really did not enjoy was the fight between Doc Seismic and all of the supers. Like the conversations between Eve and Amber, this isn't necessarily a bad moment, but it just feels very awkward. Doc Seismic's attack on the world makes sense, and it was absolutely crucial for the plot, but the fight itself was just kind of weird. Mark and Eve just kind of fly around the whole time and punch some bugs with really thick armor. I get that these bugs were raised in the middle of the earth, so being tough makes sense, but the whole fight is just kind of both sides doing nothing to each other. Eve throws some pink crystals, and Mark just punches around. This fight definitely could have been more exciting and interesting, and while we absolutely needed this scene to exist for the show's narrative, it 100% could have had some better action. Even when Darkwing and the Reanimen showed up, it felt super underwhelming, and I wanted and expected a lot more. But a moment that I absolutely enjoyed was the entrance of the Mauler Twins. As my favorite villains from this show, as long as you don't count Omni-Man as a villain, the Mauler Twins go so freaking hard. The Run the Jewels needle drop that always accompanies their scenes is one of my favorite pair-ups, because the feel, tone, and rhythm of Run the Jewels' music perfectly matches the vibe that the Mauler Twins bring to the function. They prove they're a formidable opponent because now they're just using some lightning gun they've made and it just obliterates the new goons of the globe. All of the lines between the blue clones are perfectly written for their characters, and the change up of them being villains to now supposedly businessmen is genuinely so funny. They better not stay dead, because I love the Mauler Twins and I anxiously await their return if they get one at all. But given their tendency to replicate themselves, I think seeing them again is definitely a strong possibility. And I hope so too, because I don't want to live in a world where the Mauler Twins aren't on screen. Oliver annihilating the Mauler Twins is a hard moment to watch for me personally, but it isn't a bad moment like this next one. The second worst moment isn't a specific moment in the show, but it's really just a trend from these 3 episodes. Episode 1 begins with Mark training and showing us how powerful and fast he's gotten, but then it feels like every single scene that he fights in, he isn't even close to going all out. In fights like the one with Multipol, him holding back makes sense, and he even addresses it. But he should not be getting packed up by Lava Dude and his tongue machine brother. His inconsistency and his speed is the worst part too, because we see in episode 3 how quickly he can cover short distances, but where was this speed in every other fight that he's been involved with? We see him doing all this training and hear all these statistics about how he's gotten stronger and faster and more durable, but the only times he seems to be more dominant is when he's angry at Cecil. Other than that, he doesn't seem much different than he was in seasons 1 or 2. It feels very inconsistent, as if Mark is being buffed for all the big fights to come, like when he inevitably fights a Viltrumite, and then nerfed whenever he has to take down a villain of the week. It just overall lets me down, because I know the showrunners are holding out on us in terms of how powerful this kid has become, especially when compared to other Earthlings. But all of that is okay, and I'm willing to overlook it, because the best moment of these 3 episodes is amazing. It's the chase scene between Oliver and Mark at the end of episode 3, and it's not even close. More broadly, it starts with Oliver killing the Mauler Twins and lasts up until Mark and Debbie confront him about it. All of this left me speechless, because not only is Oliver a beast with his powers, and honestly is performing better than Mark is, he's also literally his dad. He was just ripping through dudes, and then refuses to admit that he was in the wrong. The fact that he's a child and having to handle all of this responsibility and power is so interesting, because we thought that Mark had it bad as a 17-year-old getting Viltrumite powers. The flight scene between Mark and Oliver is exceptional, because it reminds us of the season 1 finale, except the murderous Grayson family member is now the weaker one of the dynamic. Oliver is shaping up to be one of the best parts of this season, if not the best. His character is just so well written, and the dynamic between him and Mark and Debbie is great. You gotta remember, the Viltrumites are an incredibly violent species, and the bug people from Thraxa aren't remotely human. So Oliver having a very different idea of what it means to do the right thing makes total sense, because he shares literally literally zero biology with humans, and then on top of that, he's a child who is one of the most powerful beings on the planet. I cannot wait to see more of Oliver and Mark, because their dynamic is the highlight of the show so far. But I will say, Oliver could definitely get a better suit, because I really don't like his current one, even with the giant O symbol that doesn't belong to him. As great as the peak moments from these episodes were, it is also accompanied by some pretty bad stuff. And so, the worst moment from these 3 episodes is just the overwhelming amount of side stories that are going on. There is just too much. Let's just briefly map out all of the different stuff that goes on in these 3 episodes. We see Mark and Cecil in the GDA, the Grayson family, the now divided Guardians of the Globe, Eve talking to her parents, Eve going to college and then talking to Amber, as well as making new friends, the Mauler Twins show up, Multipol shows up, there's those 2 time-traveling twins or clones of each other running around, Angstrom Levy is back, and he's stalking Mark, Omni-Man and Alan are still up in space, telepathically communicating with one another, Debbie is dating a new guy, spilling all of her family secrets to him, Mark and Eve are also dating, Titan is finally back, there's Mafia problems now too to go with the Order being introduced, Doc Seismic was kind of a problem for a minute, we got that montage of those 2 brothers, and so much more happened in the span of just these 3 episodes. Like, Rexplode is going on an entire character arc throughout all of this. This has always been one of my biggest problems with Invincible, and it's that they just do too much constantly. I don't want to call it filler necessarily, but that's definitely what it can feel like at times. None of these side plots were bad, there's just too many of them. And I would rather the story take a much more focused stance on the important characters instead of showing us how many superheroes and villains they can juggle all at once. But maybe I'm tripping, so call me out for it in the comments if you disagree. Comment down below what you thought of the first 3 episodes for Invincible, and also drop any theories or predictions you might have for the rest of the season. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe before you go, and I'll see you next time.